be placed on mute during the presentation portion of the program. This will help reduce background noise and echo. You can choose to be on camera or not. Click on the camera icon in the black banner on the bottom of your viewing page to turn your camera on or off. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation program, Mindfulness Mondays. My name is Crista Ellis, and I'm the Community Programs Manager for the Florida and Gulf Coast chapters. During this time of social distancing, we hope that you are able to stay healthy and safe at home. Due to the evolving situation around the COVID-19 outbreak, we are taking every precaution to look after our Parkinson's community. In our efforts to help you stay connected, the Parkinson's Foundation is providing weekly educational and wellness programs in a virtual format through our PD Health at Home series. PD Health at Home. Each Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will have a live expert sharing their tips and knowledge on staying mindful during this unique time. Every week, we will explore a different topic of how the practice of mindfulness can influence your health and well-being. The Parkinson's Foundation is dedicated to engaging and empowering the Parkinson's community. I am thrilled to be able to share this time during our Mindfulness Monday event with you. Be sure to mark your calendars and join us next Monday as we dive deeper into the practice of mindfulness and its benefits as we cope with the challenges of physical distancing. To learn more and to register for individual events, visit parkinson.org/PDHealth. This is new for us all, so we thank you in advance for your patience while we are getting used to doing things a new way. As a reminder, your questions can be submitted through the chat function in the black banner on the bottom of your viewing page. We will do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can during the Q&A portion of this program. Today's session will be recorded and archived on the Parkinson's Foundation website at parkinson.org/PDHealth. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the Parkinson's Foundation mission and resources. Next slide. I believe it's this. Okay, we'll stay with this slide. Thank you. Perfect. The Parkinson's Foundation makes life better for people living with Parkinson's disease by improving care and advancing research toward a cure. In everything we do, we build on the energy, experience, and passion of our global Parkinson's community. We provide families with free resources, including our website, parkinson.org, educational books, webinars, podcasts, a life-saving hospitalization kit, and our toll-free bilingual helpline, 1-800-4-PD-INFO, which is staffed by Parkinson's specialists. To learn more about our resources and our upcoming virtual events, remember to visit our website at parkinson.org or call our helpline at 1-800-4-PD-INFO. Next slide. Now it's my pleasure to welcome our guest speakers who will kick off this series. We will begin with a presentation on mindfulness and how to reduce emotional stress, how to understand it, and we will end with a wonderful mindful exercise. Dr. Amie Hiller is a movement disorders neurologist working at Oregon Health and Sciences University, a Parkinson's Foundation Center of Excellence, and VA Portland Healthcare System. Dr. Hiller completed her MD at the Medical College of Georgia, her neurology residency at Brown University, and health policy fellowship in Washington, D.C., and movement disorders fellowships at UMass Medical Center and OHSU Portland, VA. She has had an interest in mindfulness and Parkinson's disease since her time at UMass and completed a pilot study with Dr. Jeffrey Proulx on this topic. Sharing some information of our mindfulness expert, Dr. Jeffrey Proulx is an assistant professor of public health and medicine at Brown University. He is also a senior researcher at the Mindfulness Center at Brown and an affiliate assistant professor in neurology at Oregon Health and Science University. Dr. Proulx is a developmental health psychologist, and his work explores how the brain and body are related, particularly in regard to health effects associated with psychological stress. Dr. Proulx is formally trained as a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher and has explored the application of mind-body interventions in Parkinson's patients, African American women, Native American populations, medical students, and many others, in addition to years of leading mindfulness classes. It is my sincere pleasure to turn the mic over to Dr. Amie Hiller.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. It's exciting to be doing this. And like Crista said, we're all a little new to this, so I'm going to really try to slow down so everyone can hear things, and hopefully this will go well. So today is just a beginning introduction, as we're planning to do quite a few of these talks over the next few weeks. So there may be a lot more information you want to know, and that will likely come as things go forward. Today, what I'm going to try to touch on first is just a little overview of emotional stress in the brain, and then a discussion about what emotional stress is. This isn't the same for everyone. It's not always completely obvious what this is. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. And then I'll do a brief introduction to mindfulness. And then Dr. Proulx will take over at that point and lead us all in a little mindfulness exercise, which I know I am looking forward to. Next slide. So this slide isn't for you to make notes of and try to know what all these letters and such mean. It's really just to give the information that chronic stress does a lot to our brain. So it affects the hippocampus, which is the part of our brain most involved in memory, in a negative way. There's oxidative stress, which we often hear about that in the lay press, and we know oxidative stress is not a good thing. General neurodegeneration, which means a dying back of the nerve cells. The HPA axis is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. That's where cortisol is involved. And we know hyperactivity there is not a good thing either. And then it also can increase neuroinflammation. So the take home of this is that it does a lot, and a lot of potentially bad things to the brain. Next slide. So what is emotional stress? And I like this slide in that it's sometimes easier to think about what isn't emotional stress, right? So I think sometimes we don't even notice when we're stressed, but if we think about when we really feel calm, and I think of sitting on the beach in a beach chair, a little bit of sun on my face, hearing the waves lap, just that calm that you might get from that. And that's kind of what we're hoping to have a little bit more of. And hopefully mindfulness can help us with that. Next slide. In talking a little bit more about what is emotional stress, this is a scale that was developed many years ago called the Holmes-Rahe Life Stress Inventory. And this goes through life events over the last year and gives you point values for those. And some of these are very obvious. Previous slide, please. Thanks. Some of these are very obvious. So obviously the death of a spouse, a divorce, marital separation, we'd expect these to be stressful events, right? But some of these are not. really thought of as particularly negative things. They can be quite positive things too. So marriage gives quite a few points there: marital reconciliation, retirement. So things that might be good things can still be stressful. So realizing that this is normal, that any sort of change can result in stress. And then next slide. And then towards the bottom, the things that are kind of minor points, but still can cause stress, are things that we think of as really good things, right? Vacations, major holidays. So again, that change, even good things, can result in stress. And this is expected and normal. And then if you can add up all the points, if you're 150 points or less, that's pretty good. So there's been a low amount of life change. There's a low susceptibility to stress-induced health breakdown. And not to say that low stress is not necessarily good, but if you're in this range, maybe not a lot you need to work on. If you're in the 150 to 300 points, which is where I am at the moment, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this in a minute, that there may be a major health breakdown, 50% chance that there's going to be some major changes in health. And again, that we know that stress affects things, not just the brain, but other health things as well. And then if you're 300 points or more, that there's an 80% odds that there might be some health-related changes going on. Next slide. So with everything going on related to the coronavirus, COVID-19, I looked at myself and how my stress has changed over that time. So these are pictures before COVID. The picture with me and a number of women there is on a recent vacation to Florida with all my very close friends from medical school, not all of them, but a group of my very close friends from medical school. And kind of was doing a lot of that beach chair on the beach, very relaxing time. This was before restrictions were put in place, just to be clear on that. And then on the other side is a picture. The two little ones are my young children, and the older girl is a family friend, going out to a local museum. Had a wonderful day socializing with she and her mother. She was great with the kids. The kids had a wonderful time. So two activities that would not be possible at this point. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Oh, previous slide, sorry. And this is my post-COVID score is around 177, so a huge increase. The picture here, I think probably most people recognize this one, of the gentleman there with the map in the background. That is a BBC reporter who was working from home, as I am doing right now, with two young children, as I am doing right now. And the two young children came, barging in the middle of his presentation. And this is a bit of a stress. I don't have a lock on the door. Hopefully we won't be recreating this here. But it's definitely a big change to be working from home, engaging with my patients in a very different way than I have previously. The other picture there is the back of my son and my parents. My parents are older. My dad's in his 80s, and we have requested that they stay at home. We're bringing them things, but we are not visiting them at the moment. So this has been a big increase in stress for me and for them too, and has really changed the relationship that I'm able to have with them. We found ways to keep in touch, but it's not the same. We generally would see them at least twice a week. I would usually stay with the kids one night, and also they would babysit while my husband and I had some alone time, which we have not had since all this started. Next slide. So question for the group, if people have noticed an increase in their emotional stress over the past couple of weeks. So definitely quite a few people are in the yes category. So looks like above 80% there, kind of consistently in that range. And again, this is to be expected. There's been a lot of changes in a brief period of time. So this is very much expected. Next slide. And then again, thinking about what is emotional stress. I'm just going to see if I can put that question down here. About what is emotional stress. This is a picture of a grocery store with bare shelves. And I think one of the things that's happened too with all of this going on is that things that used to not be stressful are now becoming stressful events, right? So going to the grocery store, which maybe there's a certain degree of stress in grocery shopping for many of us, but for the most part, that was a pretty routine experience, right? We go to the grocery store, get our cart, fill up with our things we need. Now we may be worrying about what time are we going to go to the grocery store, so we can contact the fewest number of people. Have we cleaned our cart sufficiently as possible? Are we putting on a mask to wear to the grocery store to make things safer? Are the things we need going to be there when we get to the grocery store? We've all heard about the toilet paper issues. I think yeast is another one that's been in short supply. So something that we really took for granted in the past is now potentially a very stressful, difficult experience. So on that emotional scale, even if the numbers aren't particularly high, they're not accounting for some of the things that we're managing right now. I think also, just watching the news or reading the newspaper is often quite stressful these days, and hearing how many people are affected with this illness. And even if we ourselves are feeling protected and safe, there is worry for what other people are going through too. Next slide. So this slide is to illustrate that not everyone's going to react to stress in the same way. So this is a slide talking about extroverts and introverts. So an extrovert defines the weekend as the time of week they can be around a lot of people. And introverts as the time they can be alone, read their favorite books, and have some quiet me time. I was talking with a friend over the weekend, and I said, "Oh, how are you guys doing with the stay-at-home orders there in Washington, which has stay-at-home orders like Oregon?" And she said, "Well, I'm an introvert, and I'm doing fine." And she's actually enjoying it, I think, for in large part the actual stay-at-home part. She said, "My husband, on the other hand, he's an extrovert, and this is really difficult for him." So realizing that not everyone's gonna respond the same way, and what might be stressful for one person isn't gonna be stressful for another. And that's just the way we're wired, that people just have different things that are going to be stressful for them, different environments that are going to feel stressful, and different things that may feel relaxing as well. So this is something I think to talk about, especially with whoever it is that you're spending most of your time with, because they may not be reacting the same way as you are. And I think also forums like this are nice in talking to other people and seeing how they're managing with things. And your significant other or your family that you live with may not be the same wired as you are. And so talking with them about how you're feeling about some of the pieces of this, they may not be the biggest helps, because it may not be a big issue for them at all. Next slide. So one of the other things that I think is important to realize is we know that emotional stress worsens some Parkinson's symptoms. There's not a large body of literature in this, but I think part of that is that everyone kind of knows this, right? And any movement disorders textbook you read, when you read about Parkinson's, they say, oh, and the symptoms get worse with stress. The tremor is one of the ones we notice the most. And regularly in my clinic visits, if I'm wanting to make someone's tremor come out, I'll have them do a stressful task. I'll have them spell a word backwards. That's a little complicated. Or I might, if they've talked about there's some issue going on with one of their children or a coworker, I'll have them kind of recount that to try to bring out that tremor. So even with just in that quick moment, we can see tremors worsen. Dyskinesias, those are the movements like Michael J. Fox has. Those often get quite a bit worse with stress as well. People often describe being at a movie and there's a suspenseful part, and then they start wiggling around a lot. Freezing of gait is another one, and that's when your feet kind of get stuck to the floor and you can't get them to move. So it's expected, right? We're saying it's expected that stress is going to be increased right now, and it's expected that symptoms are going to be worse during times of increased stress. So I think just realizing this, not being hard on yourself about this, because this is expected. A situation that often comes up with my patients is they'll go through some sort of medical procedure, a surgery or something, and will have to increase their medications for a period because their symptoms are worse because of the stress of that surgery, both the physical and the emotional stress. And then as they get back to their normal routine, as their body heals, then we can pull back again. So again, just knowing this is to be expected. Next slide. So another polling question here. Have you noticed a worsening of your PD symptoms in the last couple of weeks? So it looks like quite a few people. So a little over half, and then 30% no, and then another group unsure. So so something quite a few people are experiencing. For those of you who aren't, that's great. You may be the introverts out there who aren't enjoying the isolation a little bit. Next slide. So what do we do about stress? So there's a number of things that we can do about stress, and this is not an exhaustive list by any imagination. One of them is mindfulness, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this today and in the Mondays to come. Other things are exercise. And I think Friday is the exercise day that the Parkinson's Foundation is doing. Yoga is another one, and is actually part of mindfulness oftentimes. Socialization is also something that can really help with stress for people. So one of the things that I found was interesting, and part of the reason I pulled out these particular things, is besides the mindfulness, and even the mindfulness, these things are going to be tougher right now, right? So I think a lot of people go to gyms to exercise. In most places, the gyms are closed at the moment. Yoga studios, most places are going to be closed at the moment. Socialization, we know for most people in most places, this is quite limited now. So we have to kind of get creative to think about how to make these things work. Mindfulness, thankfully, is one that I think is quite feasible to do in this sort of format. And Dr. Proulx and I actually a couple of years ago did a small mindfulness Parkinson study where he did the sessions via a video feed, and we found that was quite helpful. So I think this is a really good format that we can really move forward with mindfulness and working on this component of stress reduction. Next slide. So I wanted to ask the group if they've had trouble doing the things that in the past have helped manage stress. And this one's looking maybe a little more mixed. And I think some of that may be too, I know in talking to some people, actually this kind of cutting back on things for some people has actually been helpful, that they're kind of focusing on being at home and staying in touch with family and friends, and not go all the time. But again, over 50% of people are saying that they're having some trouble with this. And I think it is a set shift to kind of think about, are there different ways that we can approach things. Next slide. So what is mindfulness? And I think the easiest is kind of to read the definition, which I'll do now, and it's also printed here. It's a means of improving mental health and reducing symptoms of stress. It's a moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness as a means to reduce stress and improve coping. Programs focus on tools to cope with intense physical and emotional situations, relaxation practices such as meditation, and yoga, and discussion of those techniques. So it's really focusing on this moment to moment, non-judgmental awareness, and then using these other tools to help with this. Next slide. There's been mindfulness stuff all over the place, right? This was a Time magazine cover from a number of years back now. And some of this suggested that we kind of need this, especially with our multitasking culture. I think some of the technology is wonderful now that we're able to connect this way, but we also, probably many of us have our computer or iPads up and our cell phone on the side and other things going on as well, maybe the TV going in the background or a radio. So there's a lot going on this way, but a lot of role for mindfulness, I think, in the current situation that we have. Next slide. And then this is another article. This was from the New York Times Magazine, The Muddied Meaning of Mindfulness, that you might see different things being called mindfulness, again, because there's been such a wide use of this that sometimes it can be something different to different people. I think this is okay just to be aware of it. And again, thinking of that moment-to-moment awareness as really being the prime aspect of mindfulness. Next slide. And then this is kind of an outline of the classic mindfulness-based stress reduction program, or MBSR, it's also known as. And the classic education has been done as an 8-week sessions, or 8 weeks of sessions, about 2 hours once a week, as well as an hour a day of home practice, and then a retreat, a half-day long retreat. So this is a pretty intense curriculum, and each session would have a topic and then learn some practices, and then there would be a lot of discussion. And if anyone's ever done a course like this, you'll be familiar probably in looking this over. It's also important to note that they're not every class, even when there's a fairly set curriculum, follows exactly the same way. As a lot of it is discussion based, and it's based on what the group wants to do more about, what they've noticed, what they've experienced, and that sharing and working together. So it can fluctuate a little bit. And, obviously with what we're doing here, this isn't going to be a classic MBSR 8-week course. We're going to have some brief interactions. But to know that there is more out there, and that potentially doing these things even in small doses can be something beneficial. But I just wanted to introduce the larger topic and acknowledge that we're doing something different, but that these things are out there too. Next slide. So now I think we're on to the mindfulness exercise, and Dr. Proulx can take over at this point and begin that aspect.
Thanks, Amy. That was great. So hi, I'm Jeff Proulx, and I wanted to take a moment before we get into this mindfulness exercise to talk a little bit about my research and to set up kind of what we're going to do. So I study stress and the effects of stress, and oftentimes I do that looking at cortisol, because cortisol levels will rise when we're under stressful circumstances. But also cortisol has a daily rhythm that goes throughout the day, that we have a natural production of cortisol, and part of that helps us wake up in the morning. It's called the cortisol awakening response, and it's a big boost of cortisol in the morning. And it's an important health-related biomarker that we use. But one of the things that I've noticed about the cortisol awakening response, it also suggests that we're still remembering stress from the day before. And so the more I look at these daily rhythms of stress and how we sort of carry stress throughout the day, it seems like our mind is always running. Our mind is always thinking about things in the future or things in the past, or worried about circumstances, or reliving arguments or reliving discussions. And a lot of different stimuli in our environment, including our own bodies, can have that effect. So what I've started to notice is that even when we're asleep, and even when we're going to sleep or we're waking up the next day, is it seems like our mind is constantly brewing over these different stressors that we have. And we can measure this in sort of our physiological responses. And the reason why I bring this up, and I imagine if you were to pay attention to your own mind and your thinking process throughout the day, you might recognize that the mind is always running, it's always running, it's always moving. So one of the reasons that I became drawn to mindfulness and mindfulness exercises in particular is because it was a nice way to take a break from that, just even for 10 minutes, just to stop that constant trend of mind going, even from things that happened the day before or several days before. And so this exercise that we're going to do, and it's going to be relatively brief, about 10 minutes, but what we're going to do is just very simply just sit in our chairs. And we're going to basically be present in this moment. That's the whole, as Dr. Hiller was pointing out, that's the whole point of this practice, is this moment by moment, non-judgmental awareness. Because even though we stay still, our minds keep going and our bodies keep going. And so do stimuli from the outside environment, but it's about being able to be still and let these events come and go as they will, and not grab onto each thought that crosses our mind and run with it. But in other words, just to allow events just to come and go as they will, because thoughts will arise, events will arise, but whether or not we get stressed about it, we actually have some control over. And a lot of that control isn't about things that we do necessarily, but perhaps thinking about the sense of non-doing. And that's the essence of mindfulness practice, is this concept of non-doing. So as we transition to, there's a lot of people here who would be interesting to have a discussion with the wider group about their experiences with mindfulness. I wish we could all just raise hands. But what we're going to do today is just a simple sitting exercise, and we're going to pay attention to our breathing. And what this does, and the breath is an incredible resource for us in the sense that the breath is always there. And one thing, when I first started learning about mindfulness, we had a motto in the first class of this mindfulness-based stress reduction that Amie was talking about. Is the motto is, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than there's wrong with you. And I always found that to be a really interesting thing, because I've been breathing since the moment I was born, and will continue to until my last breath, but I rarely pay attention to something so integral to my health and to my well-being as breathing. As someone said, if you found breathing and breathing meditation to be kind of boring, there's a great exercise you can do, is you close your mouth, and close it real tight, and you take your fingers like this in this little motion, and you keep your mouth closed, and then you put your fingers over your nose, and then just hold it there for a while. And after a while, I want you to figure out how important the breath is to you. And it's usually just and when we lose the breath, and when we lose the natural, and when we start to lose these things, that's when we start to notice these. So what mindfulness exercises does, it just brings us into this present moment using whatever resources we have. And in this case, it's breathing. So what I'd like you to do is I encourage you to just get onto a place in your chair that you feel the most comfortable, that will allow you to have the straightest back that you can have. A lot of mindfulness is about being awake. And we find that if our body supports the posture of us being awake, we're much more likely to actually be awake. And that is expressed through having a nice straight spine, in your neck, in your shoulders, in your back, all aligned in one nice line, as comfortably as you can, without stressing or straining your body in order to get in that position, but just finding yourself sitting nice and straight, awake, with your chest out to the world, your heart exposed. You can have your eyes open or closed, it's up to you. And with the very top of your head, if you can, pretend that you have a balloon tied to the top of your head, and that balloon is just very gently pulling your head nice and straight up towards the sky. And in contrast, your feet flat on the ground, And resting your feet on the ground, feeling the floor holding your feet up, letting loose with all of your muscles and relaxing in your nerves in your feet and in your calf and in your knees and in your thighs. And breathing regularly, just letting your body draw the air in and release the air. Noticing the beautiful function of all our ribs do is expand out and pull our lungs open. And it changes the pressure, the pressure difference in between your lungs and the air outside draws the air into your lungs, all very naturally. It's a beautiful thing. And then when you decompress, the change in pressure from inside your lungs to outside also changes, and that's what releases the air out of your lungs. This very natural process that happens every moment of every day, bringing in nutrients and oxygen that we need from the outer air, and then releasing out carbon dioxide and the garbage that we don't need from our respiratory system, and then breathing in nutrients and breathing out the waste products that we don't need anymore. What I'd like you to do is just feel your body sitting here breathing. Get rid of any idea of meditation or meditating, and bring yourself feeling your body breathing in this moment. Now, you may have noticed as you're sitting here feeling into your body that thoughts start to arise. They may even be frantic, coming at you with a lot of speed. And that's fine. That's what our mind does. It thinks, it comes up with thoughts. Just continue to sit here, bringing your mind back and your attention back into your body. Maybe it's your belly rising and falling with each breath. Or maybe notice the air in your nostrils as it comes in. Or perhaps you can follow the breath all the way from the beginning as it comes into your nostrils, passes your lungs, expands your belly, and then returns back out, paying attention to the space between the breaths, and then breathing back in. And if you get distracted by thoughts, notice that at one moment you're paying attention to your breath, and the next moment you're thinking about the Red Sox lineup. That's fine. The key to mindfulness is to recognizing where your mind's been distracted to, recognizing the distraction, and then just returning back to what the object of your attention was. In this case, your breath. Are you breathing in or are you breathing out? And once again, noticing if you become distracted. Just notice what that distraction is. Let it go. And come back to breathing. And also take note of your own body. Are your eyeballs relaxed? Or are they bulging out? Is your forehead nice and flat and smooth? Or is it furrowed in concentration? How about your jaw? Letting go of the muscles in our face and in our body, relaxing, sitting straight. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. No objects in the past or no objects in the future, just this breath. Just this. And you may experience blissfulness or peace, or you may experience sudden moments of your body getting tight, or a sense that you might not even want to sit any longer. Whatever it may be, blissful or difficult, just let it come and go without grasping onto it. The only task here is to just pay attention to this breath in this moment. Nothing else to accomplish or get to, just paying attention to this breath. And if you choose to, I would encourage you to change the focus of your attention and settle into a sense of hearing. Noticing how quickly you can move your attention from one task to another, indicating that you have control over where you place your attention. So much about what we're doing in mindfulness is about where our attention is in each moment. attending to. It's one of the best words in the English language, attending. And in this case, we're attending to sounds as they enter into our awareness without reaching out and listening for sounds or judging sounds or making up a story about what we hear. Just simply allowing these sound waves to come into our awareness. And noticing that if we try to listen for sounds, sometimes we hear sounds and sometimes we don't. But when we give up the effort to listen and instead relax into just hearing, accepting what comes our way in each moment and then letting it go its own way, we settle into hearing. Ringing in your ears, sounds outside of the room or above you or below you. Hearing. And as you sit hearing, also see if you can become aware of the spaces between sounds. The silence, the emptiness between sounds. Hearing. And in about 1 minute, I'll ring a bell 3 times, which would be your sign to slowly open your eyes if they were closed and maybe wiggle your fingers and toes. Right now, maintaining the posture of hearing. And that's it. Crista?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Proulx. Lovely, lovely guided meditation. Really appreciate your guidance and your support through this mindfulness practice. Next slide. And Amie and Dr. Proulx, feel free to jump in here. We have listed some of the mindfulness resources where Dr. Proulx and Dr. Hiller are based. Dr. Proulx is with Brown University, and there are online meditations that you can access via this website. I'd encourage you guys to get your smartphones out if you have them, snap a photo of the screen so you can access them later. And of course, Dr. Hiller at UMass, UCSB, and there's other local resources. Please feel free to reach out to the Parkinson's Foundation helpline, 1-800-4PD-INFO for more local resources. Next slide.
Oh, wait, can we go back? So I just wanted to point out that the Brown University site has every day they have virtual meditation sessions, and I think this has been going on since the COVID shutdown. So you can access that, and every day they'll have a different, somewhere on their page you can find the link to join on a daily meditation practice if you want. And also the University of California at San Diego has a really good resource for if you decide that you would like to continue to do meditation. It is very helpful to have somebody who can guide you through it and have a recording for that. So UCSD has a really lovely wall of different recordings of different types of meditation. So you can go on there, and they encourage you to download it and use it for free. That's what it's there for. And they have different types of meditation for different lengths of time. So some could be 10 minutes, some could be 45 minutes. And they're also sometimes breathing meditation. They have lying down yoga, standing yoga, sitting yoga. They also have different types of body scans, which is a progressive visualization of your body parts as you lie down. It's a very useful tool for people like me who have back problems. I like to lie down a lot. But also it's very good for an opportunity to just become more in close. People tend to report lower pain using the body scan, and that they sleep better. So it's a really nice resources to have, and I encourage people to poke around at these different ones. In UMass, I'm not sure what their offerings are right now, but because so much of what was going on at UMass has switched to Brown University recently. So there's kind of a separation there. But I encourage you to poke around and to look at these resources and see if there's anything that you can find helpful for you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Proulx. We do have some questions that came through during our presentation. If you could go to the next slide. And Dr. Hiller has asked a question today. I'll be sending this poll out. Go ahead and answer. Are there any new ways you have found to reduce your emotional stress over the last couple of weeks?
And I thought too, if we didn't have a lot of questions, this might be some place to start, of people also saying what they've found, if they have, to kind of share with the group. But if we have specific questions, we can answer those and then maybe get to this on another Monday.
Now, can they include our meditation session we just did as a new way?
I would say yes.
I think so. Great. So it looks like 56% of the participants today say no, they have not found new ways. So I would encourage those of you to, all of you, to join us next Monday as we continue to explore the practice of mindfulness. Next slide. And we're going to come into our Q&A portion here. One question that came in, Dr. Hiller, Dr. Proulx, what if I am too restless or too antsy or anxious to sit still and meditate, or to even sit quietly and take deep breaths?
I can start with this one. So there's other ways to do meditation as well, and I think that's something that we'll be able to cover as we go through this for the next few weeks. But for some people, walking meditations might be very good, where they can actually physically move their body if they're having trouble with the sitting still and calming that way. I think also if you think of other things that help you feel more relaxed, and then think about how to access those things. Jeff, do you have other ideas?
I was going to say similar things, or yoga is another great way of I mean, that's a meditation, and it involves focus on your breath and focus on being present in the moment. But also at the same time, I think it's a practice. Meditation is a practice, and something that, this is where the non-judgment part comes in. People will sit and they'll start to meditate, and I hear a lot of people tell me, it's like, I can't do this, or I'm not doing this well. And those are all judgments. And so this is part of that practice of being able to sit and watch your breath. And even if you can't sit for more than a couple minutes or 10 minutes, is just keep going back and try to sit for 10, 15 seconds more each time that you do it. And over time, it starts to become a new habit that you have. Because now the habit is to be anxious, or to be, not being able to sit still. And this is a process of changing those habits. So I would just say the main thing is to approach it from looking at different options, like going to that UCSD page might help, looking at different ways of doing meditation, but just stay with it and focus on that whole concept of not judging your performance. You're not performing and you're not trying to go anywhere. It's just paying attention to your breath, and you can give yourself a break on this kind of exercise.
Great, thank you. I think we have got time for one more question or two. We did get a question, can we take an MBSR course?
Yes, go to that Brown site and you'll have all the information on there. You could take it online, you can take classes. So they're offering full classes to people online. So yes, there's lots of opportunities to take mindfulness-based stress reduction. I don't know where you are, because that also will make a big difference, because people may be teaching it, though nobody's teaching in groups now for a while, but the Brown site will have MBSR classes that you can take. And I think they're actually signing people up right this moment for the next round of classes.
Great, thank you. Is there a particular part of the day that you should practice mindfulness? Morning, evening, any time of the day?
I would say anytime is good. And that's going to be, I think, very much a personal thing too. If you, find that you have the time in the morning to do it, I think it can be a great way to start the day. As Jeff alluded to, of us having, our cortisol levels high in the morning, and that even while we're sleeping, we're thinking of things. I think that is often a nice time for people to do it before they go to bed. I know sleep for many Parkinson's patients is an issue for so many reasons. And so I'll often recommend to my patients, they try to do some gentle stretching, some relaxation stuff before bedtime, so that by the time you lay down to sleep, your mind is a little clearer. But I think any time of day can work. And the biggest thing is, when is it going to help you the most, and when are you going to be able to actually give the time to do it?
And it's a good strategy to practice these things too, because it's nice to have a set time during the day when you're going to meditate, but it's also nice to have as a resource that sometime during your day, when something goes not how you wanted it to go, that you know how to quickly get into that meditation practice, even if it's for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, simple breathing or something, but to bring you back to your center rather than allowing your mind to move off. So it's great to practice, and any time of day is really good, and it is very personal, like Dr. Hiller says. So just play with it, I think, is the main thing.
Great, thank you. Last question for today's session. Is there a relationship between cortisol and dopamine? Does reduced dopamine make one more susceptible to stress?
I can talk about that one a little bit. There's not great data in people with Parkinson's. There's some things from animal models showing that higher cortisol seems to have some negative effects on dopamine. And we don't know, I would say, exactly if reduced dopamine makes people more susceptible to stress, but we do know that there is more anxiety and depression and other mood issues seen in Parkinson's than in people with other chronic medical illnesses. So that there does seem to be some changes there. We also know that other neurochemicals, aside from dopamine, that control our mood are reduced in people with Parkinson's. So I would say they're more generally susceptible and more likely to have issues with mood concerns than the general population. And so I think secondarily, you could say that there probably is an increased susceptibility to stress. And then certainly that, we can see symptoms worsen with stress. And for some patients, I think they use that in a positive way. I have patients who they're like, as soon as my tremor starts to go, I know I'm starting to get stressed and I need to relax. So it's kind of like their stress meter, and they can use it that way. So certainly some of the physical symptoms are susceptible to stress.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hiller. We are just at the top of the hour. So I want to give a big thank you to our amazing presenters, Dr. Amie Hiller and Dr. Jeffrey Proulx, for joining us today, and for all of you who were able to join and connect virtually during this time of social distancing and participating with us in mindful meditation and learning more about this discipline. Next slide. I would like to invite you to join us for our virtual Moving Day event on May 9th, Saturday, May 9th. You can learn more and register at movingday.org. A friendly reminder, next slide, that today's session will be recorded and archived on the Parkinson's Foundation website at parkinson.org/PD Health. Next slide. That's the end of the show. Thank you again for joining us, and stay healthy and safe. We'll see you all back next Mindful Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So we should take that on the road, Amie.